Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you're dialing in from, and welcome to this week's Koala Wednesday webinar. For those of you that have not joined us previously, every week we come together for an hour in which we cover a key topic, which today is ChatGPT for marketing leaders. We'll then dive into looking at some of the last 7 days news in the world of AI, and there's so much going on at the moment. And then we've got an opportunity for you to ask any questions, either about the topics that we've covered in the first half of the session or anything. Maybe you're struggling with building a ChatGPT project. Maybe you want to build your first GPT, or you're learning about some agentic workflows. Let me know what your questions are, and I'll do my best to answer them while we're on our call today. Now, as with any Zoom webinar, up at the top, you should be able to see a raise your hand if you want to actually speak. And Caitlin, who's moderating, will be able to have you join as a panelist. Or you can just ask in the Q&A bar, and I'll try and keep an eye on that as we go through. Ask your questions as we go, and we can also cover them towards at the end. So today, what are we going to be covering? Well, we're going to focus in today around marketing use cases, and specifically for marketing leaders. Over the past few weeks, I've presented at a couple of summits or exhibitions focused on B2B marketing, and I shared a number of use cases there about how we're using ChatGPT and other tools ourselves, some of the use cases we're seeing in our clients, and I thought it'd be useful to share that with you and hopefully come away with at least one or two tangible use cases that you can put into practice straight away. Then we'll spend about 15 minutes looking at AI in the news, and there has been a lot going on in the last week or so. There is a lot that's happened in the past 3 or 4 weeks with new releases. It is predicted there are some new releases that are going to be coming either later on today or tomorrow, so we will touch on that. And then, as I mentioned, we'll have some live Q&A. I've got a couple of questions that have come up with clients this week, but you can also let me know what is top of mind for yourself. So with that, let's dive into ChatGPT for marketing leaders. And the reason why I put the leaders on the end there is that as executives, as leaders, as managers, we have a responsibility to think about not just ourselves and solving our own problems using AI, but also those around us. So I think about this graphic quite a lot. In the middle there, you've got you, and depending on who you are, let's think of you being a marketing leader. That could be a marketing director. You might be a CMO. You might run a specific function within your marketing team. Above you, you've got a manager. Even the CEO has got a manager, the board and shareholders. So you've got someone that you report up into, and they have got questions. They've got things they need. They've got updates that they want. And so you serve them in terms of the work that you do and the use cases that you might have in ChatGPT. If you are a manager, then you have got direct reports, and that might be 10, 15 people that report directly up into you. And depending on where you are in the organization, you've got people that report into those direct reports. And so they've all got questions and need help and advice and understanding best practice and processes. And then you've got your peers sideways. So in marketing, your number one peer might well be the sales leadership, who are trying to understand what our messaging is, why we're doing certain campaigns, why are we focused on a specific territory or industry. You might be working with HR, who are helping you in your hiring. Now, the reason why this is such a useful graphic is that, as I say, so often we think about helping ourselves with AI. Help me do this, help me write this email. But if we can actually step out of our own bubble for a bit and start thinking about how we can help other people in our organization, then we can really get some more powerful outputs and value from AI. And so what I'm going to show you now is just a few sort of simple scenarios, things in sort of core ChatGPT that we are using and that we see working quite well. Whilst I'm going to be showing ChatGPT, you can do a lot of this in Gemini if you're in the Google Workspace. You could do some of it in Copilot. And if you guys are using Claude or anything like that, then you can do a lot of this. It's more the concept that is the important bit, and the tool itself is quite transferable. So let's start with a really simple one, event planning. Regardless of the industry that you're in, I'm sure you're doing some form of events for your clients. That could be face-to-face events. It could be virtual events like this one. And so we use a ChatGPT shared project. So let me jump out and jump into my ChatGPT here and then go into an example of this project. So we're in ChatGPT. We have got a project, and in this project, our team collaborate around the plan for our Wednesday webinars. So what is a shared project? Well, we've got some instructions in here where we tell ChatGPT what our Wednesday webinars are about. We're doing a series of Wednesday webinars. Each week, we're going to have a 1-hour session, as I've explained what we're covering. We want to use this project for help in coming up with new ideas for new webinars and planning the content out. How this project works. It's going to have a conversational interview with us, asking us a bit of information about the type of webinar that we want to host and the content. What's the topic or title? When's it scheduled? What's the main learning outcome we want people to come away with? Who's the target audience? What are the key topics to cover? Excellent, excellent, excellent. So there's a lot of description about what this project is going to do. Then we have fed this project with a bit of background information about our Wednesday webinars and about Koala as a business. So our messaging, our positioning, the ideation process, and our Sanity schema. Sanity is our CMS, and this is where we host all of the information about the webinars that you see on the website. And so knowing that schema can help ChatGPT to create content for us in exactly the right way. The third thing I'll show you before I have a quick chat with this project is that you can now share projects in ChatGPT. And so here you can see that this is shared with a couple of members of our team. Nick is able to edit the project, and that means he can edit some of the instructions and the files, adding in new files. And Caitlin is able to chat. So she can be a consumer of this project, but she can't change any of the information. Now, what does it mean to share a project? It means that each of us can actually see each other's chats. We can all come in here and have a conversation on our own about various topics. But it means that other people in the project can see and continue those conversations. So if I take a look down here, for example, Caitlin was asking about building a HubSpot landing page for our Wednesday webinars. And I can see this is Caitlin's conversation. This is a conversation between ChatGPT and Caitlin. Responding will create a branch. What I was then able to do is to then continue that conversation. And this creates, if I scroll up here a little bit, you'll see this was branched from Caitlin's original conversation, and I'm able to take it off on a different thread. Now, this is super helpful when you think about your marketing team. They might be working on a webinar series like this, but they could also be working on a specific campaign launch. It could be a new branding exercise. It could be launching a new website. It might be working with colleagues in the sales team around an ABM campaign for a high-value customer. The principle here of a shared project is bringing people together to collaborate together about a topic. And in marketing, when we talk about marketing and sales alignment, alignment with other parts of the business, this can be so powerful. We want to get people away from just being single player mode, keeping the AI usage under the table, and actually make it a bit more public and above the table where we can collaborate together. So that's one use case, is using the shared projects. The next one I want to show you as a marketing leader is about how can you be better at developing yourself and bringing in capabilities and skills that you learn from other people. Now, I don't know if you've come across this newsletter. It's called Market One. It's run by a lady called Emily Kramer, who used to run marketing at SaaS companies like Asana and Carter. And I'm a big fan of this newsletter. I think I talk about it on almost all of our Wednesday webinars. And the reason is that as a relatively small business, we don't have a chief marketing officer. We don't have external marketing consultants that can build out our campaign strategy and our website strategy. We rely on learning from those outside of our organization. And whilst this is a fantastic newsletter, which for $7, I definitely recommend you subscribe, what Emily does is provide a huge number of templates and resources to subscribers that you can read. And so much of these are Google Docs, Google Sheets, Figma diagrams, and these kind of images that explain exactly her way of thinking. So, for example, she has her GACS framework, which is for how you run a campaign. Goals, the audience, the creative, the channels, and the stakeholders. And so if you're coming up with a new campaign, like a Wednesday webinars campaign, the first thing that you would do is to create a GACS brief, which would guide you through all of these things. Now, Emily is fantastic at providing you with all of these templates, but so often the challenge is, how do I use that? How do I incorporate that into my way of thinking? How do I scale that across my team? You might get the template, use it once, but you haven't worked out a way of sort of programmatically using it. And so this is where I come to my kind of mentor projects. And this is what I would call this. So again, it's a project in ChatGPT. This one is not shared. It's just for me, although I could share it. And in my instructions here, you are Emily Kramer, the founder of Market One and an expert marketer. You are acting as Koala's CMO, guiding me, the founder, as we define our marketing strategy. And you have got responsibility for all of Koala's marketing, including our strategy, growth marketing, product marketing, content marketing, field and event marketing, and so on. We follow Emily Kramer's framework. You can get access to her more detailed newsletter articles, her Market One field guide. This is great, and I highly recommend you subscribing to get access to these documents. Part 2 of her marketing field guide, and so on. So here I've given it information about Emily Kramer's frameworks. Then I've told the project about the systems that we're using, HubSpot, Canva, Midjourney, Astro for our website, and so on. Those are the instructions. I've then loaded it up with a load of great content from Emily's frameworks. So the campaign brief, the GACS framework, her perceptions exercise, annual planning template, her overall Market One method, which is, I think, a sort of 50-page slide deck. I've then given it information about Koala's marketing strategy, Koala's messaging framework, Koala's positioning canvas. And so this project now knows as much about Emily as I do, and as much about Koala as I do. And so now what I'm able to do is just come in here and talk. Hey, Emily, hope you're well. Can you just remind me of what goes into a GACS framework, a GACS brief, because we're going to start creating one for a new private dining room campaign that we're going to launch for some of our key customers in the new year. And so I don't need to explain to the project about what Koala is. I don't need to explain who Emily is. I don't need to explain what the GACS brief is, because the project is already loaded up with that. And you can see here it's referencing the overall deck that she's got. Fantastic. Goals, audience, creative. And so I find that as a leader myself, I'm able to then talk to Emily as if she's a real person that I'm chatting to and bring all of her templates and guides to life. So I have loads of these. If I read a great book, a great non-fiction book, I'm building one of these. You can see examples here on the left: the qualified sales leader, playing to win, smart brevity. All of these are based on books and frameworks, and they allow me to bring these things to life. So that's my second use case, is again a project. This is more for you yourself. And then the third example I want to give is about scaling yourself across your team. So another great book, well, as a pair of books that I suggest you buy, but the first one is the one behind, which is called Obviously Awesome. If you've worked in marketing, you might have come across positioning as an exercise. When you think about positioning, we're thinking about where's the customer likely to try and find your product. The best way of thinking about this is in a supermarket. If you are selling a new hot chili sauce, then you've got to think about what's the right shelf for your product to be on, because that's where the customer is going to be headed. There is no point putting that in the herbs section. There's no point putting that in the children's nappies and diapers section. They're not going to find it there. No, you want to go to the condiments section next to the applesauce, next to the mustard. That's where someone is going to likely find that. So that is positioning. And it's just as important in technology, in services, in SaaS, as it is in condiments. Anyway, so the book is a fantastic exercise in how you run a positioning workshop. And as part of that book, you get access to this wonderful canvas or workbook. And so let me just show you that. The positioning components that April walks you through. Firstly, we think about the competitive alternatives. When a customer thinks about your product, what are the other options that they could choose in order to solve their problem? Then for our product, what are some of the distinct attributes that we've got that we can say, right, well, we've got that and no one else or very few other people have got those distinct attributes? And then how do we take those distinct attributes and turn them into differentiated value? What is it that the customer is going to take away and say, well, the reason why I bought them was because this was valuable to me? Ease of implementation, integrations, great support, whatever those things are. Anyway, so this is the 5-step framework. And then April provides us with this lovely canvas that we would fill out as we do this workshop, coming up with the alternatives, the distinct capabilities, the differentiated value, and so on. Now, you may have read this book and you may have gone, this is amazing. I am going to, embed April's thinking in my work. But how do you then scale that across a large organization, your large marketing team? And this is where a GPT comes in. So this is similar to a project that we looked at with the Emily Kramer one, except here we're packaging it up and we're giving it to other people to be able to use. So here, for example, I might be in a marketing team. We might be working on a new campaign or a new product that we want to launch. And maybe we've not read April's book and we haven't got access to her framework, but we have got access to this positioning GPT. Great, let's get started. Before we jump into the positioning work, I need to understand who's in the room and what we're positioning. We're going to follow the Obviously Awesome process step by step. I'll challenge some vague statements as we go, and I'll also reference the workbook you shared as needed. Okay, all our prompt was help us position our product. And we didn't even type that. We just had to click a button and we got going. And so this is now going to guide us through what would be maybe a 45 to 60 minute workshop where this project or this GPT is going to guide us through this process. So how does that work? How does it know about April Dunford? How does it know to run a workshop with us? Well, if I click on the edit GPT, you'll see a little bit of what's going on in the background here. A GPT, I mean, it stands for the same GPT as ChatGPT, but it's a wrapper around a specific set of instructions and documents that you've provided it. We've given it a name, we've given it a description, and then we've given it these detailed instructions. You are a positioning coach that helps run teams through April Dunford's Obviously Awesome process. Uploaded files, I'll come on to this in a minute. You've got access to April Dunford's Obviously Awesome framework. What is your role? You're here to be a coach. You need to be supportive. You're going to kick off the workshop and guide them through. These are some workshop rules that you're going to follow. You're then going to guide them through the 5 sections: competitive alternatives, unique capabilities, differentiated value themes, and so on. And this is what gives ChatGPT the role that we have assigned it to be this workshop coach. And then so all that needs to happen for the individuals is for you to share this with them, and you can share it across your whole organization. And then for them to be sat in a room, either with a team of people or an individual, and they just need to be able to click a button and they've suddenly got access to April Dunford's framework. So we've had 3 different examples there: a shared project around your core team. We've looked at an individual project for you to be able to take mentors and information and books and frameworks that you've read to use yourself. And then we've looked at how you can use a GPT to share that externally across your team. So those are 3 kind of simple use cases in ChatGPT. There's one other that I want to touch on, which goes outside of ChatGPT, and this one might be a little bit more complex, but I think it's really important because as we go into 2026, the marketing teams that figure this out are going to be able to iterate so much faster than everyone else. And that is using tools such as Cursor and Claude Code. Now, let me share over to my screen, and let me just double check that I am sharing my entire screen. Yes, I am. So you can see that. What you can see on your, let me get out of that. How do I stop that? Okay, well, I'll just carry on sharing that. What you can see on the screen here is what's called a Cursor. It's a development environment. And on the right-hand side here, I've got a thing called Claude Code. Now, you might look at this and go, whoa, 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 Charlie, I'm not a developer. I've got no interest in being in here. But what this is the Koala website, which runs on a framework called Astro. So yes, there is some code in here, but it is really relatively simple in that it is the structure of the Koala website and all of the images and content that is on that website. So here are all of the pages, here are all the categories, and so on. Now, the advantage of Claude Code is for the first time, a non-developer can start to interact with this. Up until the advent of AI, you really had to be a developer that knew how to write code, and you probably had a sort of web development team, and you might have a backlog of stuff that you'd say, look, we really want to change that page. We really want to internationalize this. We really want to create a new landing page, and it goes into a backlog, and you're really reliant on someone to write the code. But now, if I go in here, I'm just going to ask a simple question. Hey, Claude, I'm just doing a demonstration of how non-developers can start to interact with marketing projects like this one. Can you just give me a quick summary of the structure of our website, how the navigation works, and what pages we've got, and maybe suggest 1 or 2 changes that we might make? What would be a good top-level navigation for us to add, and some pages that we might want to add to that? Let me just check that my Whisper flow is just working. Oh, that did go in there. Sorry, there was a bit of a delay there. Just as a reminder, if you've not been on one of my webinars before, I use a tool called Whisper Flow, which I just press my function key on my laptop, and it takes what I've said and puts it there, so I don't need to type it. Now, what you can see on the screen here is that because I've asked Claude to go and have a look, it's now navigating around this code base. let me explore the code base to give you a clear picture of how the site is structured. Now let me check what content collections exist and what solution pages you have. It's now going to have a little look around. Okay, here we go. And this is what comes back. Excellent. Now I've got a complete picture. Here's your website summary. Excellent. How the navigation works. The menu's configured in this file. Okay, I could go and have a look at that. All your pages at a glance. Here we've got solutions for CEOs, resources. Excellent. Suggested improvements. Add more role-based solution pages. Okay, we should have more role-based solution pages. Okay, we've got a CEO one and a CIO one. All right. Well, let's say I want a chief people officer one because we want one for them. Okay, great. I want to create a new solution page for chief people officers. So can you use our website page creator skill to start pulling together that page? Now, one of the things that you get with Claude is these skills, and I've got a marketing page builder skill, and it's saying, right, shall I use that skill? Yes, please. I have taught this skill how to create web pages in the Koala website using our tone of voice, using our brand guidelines, using our marketing, our messaging framework, and our positioning that we built with Emily Kramer and April Dunford. And so when I'm asking it to create a page, it's not just some random AI building random content for me. It's following the process that I've asked it to. Excellent. The marketing page builder is now active. Let's create your CPO page. How this skill works, we're going to go through three phases with checkpoints. 1, we're going to design the page architecture and content strategy. 2, we're going to create the actual content file. 3, we're going to generate visual asset specifications. This is basically prompts that I can go and generate images using Midjourney or get screenshots of the platform. This is what we're going to do. And basically, it's given me some questions here. Should we target, what are the pain points? What's the key value proposition? And I would then use Whisper Flow to literally spend 5 minutes answering these questions using my voice, just telling it, this is what we want. This is the messaging. This is why we think CPOs are so important for AI. Having done that, it'll then move on to the next part of its process, which is designing the page structure. Do we want features? Do we want a call to action? Do we want a hero? And so on. The third part of the process is for it to actually write that code. And it is going to do that following all of the guidance that I've provided. I will not write one letter of code in getting this page live on the website. All I need to be able to do is to talk and to be able to think about the chief people officer and the proposition for them. And as long as I can do that, we can get code onto the website. Now, depending on the structure of your organization, you will obviously be then having some code review and some content review so that when you do get to the point of having content on your website, it is all consistent. But from a content creation perspective, from being able to get the structure of new pages live into your development environment, if you can speak, you can create web content and new pages, new components, new collections of content. So super powerful. And I would, depending on the way that your team is structured, I would think about coming up with 1 or 2 people that lean into this and pick up some of these skills as you go through next year. So that was 30 minutes. That was a bit longer than we normally do on the core topic. But I think there is so much potential for marketing leaders that lean into this to figure out how to use AI in your plans next year. I'm just going to run through this and just get to a couple of other things when we get into AI in the news. I'm going to give you some of the links to this afterwards. This is linked to marketing, but it also came out fairly recently, so worth touching on it. This was a report that came out recently where they did some study on AI generated images. So I talked a moment ago about using Midjourney to create images for the website, and companies are now using AI to create images in their own marketing campaigns as well. The study was done on a large number of bits of content and working out whether it drove clicks and also what the perception was of the individuals that were viewing these campaigns. Now, I'm not going to ask you to read a 40-page detailed paper, but what I did was to take that paper and pop it into Notebook LM, which is a great way of creating visuals, amongst many other things, of detailed reports. And there's two numbers that I want to call out to you here as marketing leaders. Number one, on the left-hand side here, ads that were created entirely through Gen AI, through AI, drove nearly 20% higher click-through rate. Let me leave that with you for a minute. If the AI was responsible for the entire image, the entire concept, nearly 20% higher click-through rate. The point below, if humans had already come up with the concept and maybe the layout of the image, and AI was asked to improve it or modify it, there was zero improvement. So the improvement only came where the AI was asked to actually come up with the overall concept of the image. So that's all well and good. There's another big discussion going on more broadly about how open are you about how you use AI in your research, in your creative, in the campaigns you're doing. Now look at this number over on the right-hand side. When the recipient, the viewer, was aware that AI had been used to create the ad, minus 31.5% in the effectiveness of that ad. So the moment we know that ad has been created using AI, we almost discount it. So this is a real challenge for marketers as you think about your plans for next year. On the one hand, if you do apply AI right from the start, you can drive much more effective campaigns, potentially, depending on your use case. But if we're open and honest and we tell people this is an AI generated ad, all of that is reduced. Now, I don't have advice. I don't have guidance. I just leave these as two data points that I think are quite interesting as you think about how you incorporate AI in your creative next year. So AI in the news, lots going on at the moment. So I've just picked a few things that I think are interesting and relevant. So a couple of days ago, OpenAI published their 2025 State of Enterprise AI. So looking at the million plus businesses that are using OpenAI, and they've looked, or using ChatGPT and the OpenAI API platform, and they've looked at the numbers and how these users are using the tool. There's lots of detail in this sort of 20 or 30 page report, but I've picked out just a couple. One is the productivity gains that are being seen in their users and how those productivity gains escalate the more someone uses ChatGPT. Now, what you can see on the x-axis is a measure of how much someone is using ChatGPT based on kind of the tokens or the credits that they're using, depending on the models and whether they're using reasoning. So people over to the right-hand side are using ChatGPT more. And then what you can see on the left is an almost sort of logarithmic scale of the value that someone is getting in terms of the time saved. And so these people over on the far right that are really using the platform, saying they're saving more than 10 hours a week. You know, in a 40-hour week, that is a quarter of their time, 25% recovery of time in some of the most heavy users. And depending on what team that is, these are likely going to be your most effective employees as well. And so a huge drop to the bottom line for many companies that are figuring out how to reassign that that saved time. But it's not equally distributed across employees. It's fairly unequally distributed. What you can see on this chart shows the difference between the median employee, so these are the kind of gold diamonds, and then what's called a frontier worker. Now, what a frontier worker is in this report is the top 95% of the usage. So this is based on tokens, based on credits used. So the people that are in that top 5%, what's their difference compared to the rest? And it's pretty huge. And if you look at coding, for example, the gap between the people that are really leaning in and the people that are ambivalent or almost negative to it is 17 times. So let's think about what that means. You've got some people that are really like, right, I'm transforming the way that I work. I'm using ChatGPT, or I'm using Claude, or I'm using Gemini in the way that I plan my work. I'm using it in the research. I'm using it in coming up with multiple options. I'm using tools like Codex or Claude Code to actually come up with the code. I'm using it, tools like CodeRabbit in my testing to verify things. Like, I'm all in. These people are hammering the usage of ChatGPT. On the other hand, you've got people that are, I don't use it at all. You know, I'm not using Codex. I'm not using Claude Code. I barely go to ChatGPT to ask to try and figure out some kind of bug, and maybe I'm doing some copy pasting. But actually, I believe in the power of typing my code in key by key, and that's what I'm going to carry on doing. So you've got these massive splits of how people are using it. And, 100% my belief is that as we go through next year, the people that are on the right are the people that are going to see their careers escalate, whether that is writing code, whether it is writing content for the website, like I just showed you there, whether it is people doing data analysis or financial planning in the finance or legal teams. You're going to see the separation between the haves and the have-nots, the do's and the do-nots. And I think this is very much proof in point. The next thing that I wanted to show you in the kind of AI in the news this week is another report that came out. This was just end of last week. And this was a bit of research that was done on buying and selling used cars, is the best way of saying the scenario. And so they took a group of people, and they gave them all access to AI, and the AI task was to negotiate on buying and selling secondhand cars. And what the premise of this was to say, well, like, if we give a random selection of people who some naturally would be good negotiators, some naturally would be poor negotiators, we might think that actually the AI is a great leveler, and that it's going to bring up the people that are poor negotiators and give them almost equality, and so that everyone's got a comparable ability to negotiate because they've used, in this case, it was ChatGPT in the middle. The research results was actually the opposite. Really interesting. That depending on who you were and your ability to negotiate up front, it actually escalated your returns. So you got outsized performance. If you were a really good negotiator going in, then the instructions that you provided to ChatGPT were escalated, and it would not take no for an it would not give up until it won the deal at the right price, and so on and so forth. Whereas if you were a weak negotiator, you didn't necessarily have the right questions, the right skills, you didn't quite know what your approach was, then your output was also escalated in a negative direction. Now, the learning from this report was a phrase that they coined called machine fluency, that as an individual, as a company, our returns that we can get from AI tools depends on what happens on the left-hand side of this diagram. What is our use case? What is the questions that we ask? How do we frame the workshop and the steps that we want to go through? And if we can get that documented correctly before we give it to the model, then we are going to see an outsized return. It really doesn't matter whether we're choosing Gemini, whether we're choosing ChatGPT, whether we're choosing Grok or Copilot. The real value is on what we do on the left-hand side as a human that goes in. That's why I'm so bullish on the importance of writing great prompts and giving the right context to the tools. So we'll share a few of these links to these reports, and you can read them yourselves. I've talked about a few things there. I will now open it up to any questions. I've got a couple of other things that we can talk about while you're thinking about your questions. But if you want to put it into the Q&A panel up at the top, we can talk about anything to do with sort of the marketing scenario, marketing use cases, or anything that's going on in the world of AI. Now, while you're thinking about any questions, I mentioned earlier that we might be having some new releases that are coming out in the next couple of days, and I'll just touch on a couple of those. So firstly, probably tomorrow, we are going to see a new release from ChatGPT called 5.2. If you're on the webinars a couple of weeks ago, you will have seen that 5.1 came out. But since then, Gemini launched Gemini 3 Pro, and Claude launched Opus 4.5. And these models have gone straight to the top of the leaderboard. And it has really driven OpenAI to pull their finger out. As Stuart is saying in the Q&A here, what do you think about the Sam Altman Code Red announcement? And that is exactly what this speaks to. It has shaken OpenAI to really get moving. They need to improve on images. They need to improve on voice. They need to improve on the speed of inference on their reasoning models, and they need to improve on their coding. Whilst they are still the most widely adopted platform, they've got about 800 million weekly active users compared to Gemini at about 250, 300. I think what they've realized is the fragility of their position, that Google owns distribution through search, through Google Workspace. And if Google continue at this level of development, then OpenAI have got a potential future challenge. So I'd expect to see 5.2 launching tomorrow. I've got no idea what will be included in that, but yeah, really looking forward to what that will include. Another thing that whilst just wait if there's any other questions was let me see, AI forum, Linux, OpenAI, block. Let me just see if I can search this. There we go. This Agentic AI Foundation. Here we go. Let's move this out the way. This was launched just, I can't quite, there we go, move that out of the way. This was a new announcement just yesterday. OpenAI is one of the co-founders of this new foundation called the Agentic AI Foundation. The other co-founders, other than OpenAI, are Anthropic and a company called Block. You might have come across Square, which is a sort of cash and payments platform. And they've launched this foundation, and each of them have contributed something towards it. ChatGPT has contributed a thing called agents.md. I won't go into that in detail. Anthropic have contributed a thing called the Model Context Protocol, which is how LLMs communicate with your other systems. And Block have contributed a thing called Goose. I think that might be mentioned down here somewhere, which is a local framework that runs on your platform, on your local desktop. But in addition to OpenAI, Block, and Anthropic, Google are part of it, Microsoft, Amazon, all of the big players. And the reason why I mentioned this is that as you're starting to think about some of the decisions that you're making as an organization, which camp are we in? Are we in camp Google? Are we in camp OpenAI? Are we in camp Copilot? I think increasingly through next year, you're going to see that these players are going to collaborate just as much as they are competing, and that some of the standards like MCP, like agent.md, are going to become adopted across all of the organizations because they recognize that everyone is going to benefit from having the same protocols and systems. So with that, I can't see any other questions. I'd like to just quickly go back and remind you that next week is our last session before the Christmas break. So I'm going to be talking about ChatGPT for leaders. Today we talked a little bit about marketing specifically. Next week, we're going to talk about more strategic thinking. As a strategic leader, whether you're the CEO, a chief operating officer, chief finance officer, how do we bring some strategic thinking into our organization, either within tools like ChatGPT, or I'm going to show you something pretty cool that we built on an agentic framework to help you take action in other systems as well. So you can register on the QR code. As I say, after next week, the next session that we'll have will be the first week of January. And to those of you that aren't joining, I wish you a happy Christmas, fantastic New Year. Enjoy the last few days of work, and we'll catch up with you then.